Yes, I know we were a little bit too busy to predict this weekend's round of championship fixtures, but do not worry because we're going to be rounding them all up right now. So we're heading into the first international break already, which is an absolutely horrible thing to say, but over the next few days and the next week, I am going to be bringing you guys some awesome championship content. I am going to be revisiting my initial league table predictions as we do every season now the transfer window has closed. I'm also going to be revisiting what the bookies think and what their predicted league table is and if anything has changed within the first few weeks. And I'm also going to be bringing you guys a league table based off of each side's expected points and where teams are maybe massively overperforming or underperforming so far this season. But before we get into all of that, let's start with the game at Kenilworth Road on Friday night. Luton 1, QPR 2. Luton's really strange start to this season continues, and it still baffles me how badly Luton have started this season. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think they've been dreadful. I don't think they've been all that bad. They're not a million miles away, but there just seems to be a lack of confidence and conviction in the Luton team right now, and defensively they're just nowhere near as solid as what we come to expect from Luton. And honestly, I mean, I'm firstly going to give QPR credit here because Luton did miss some gilt-edged chances in the first half. It could have been a different game. Adebayo missed a huge one-on-one, and QPR deserve immense credit for how they started the second half and that brilliant spell where they sort of took the game away from Luton with two very quick goals. But with Luton, they were ahead in this game, and once they went 1-0 up, you thought, surely this is it for Luton, and they're going to get that elusive home win, but it didn't happen, and losing from in front at home at Kenilworth Road is something I just don't associate with a Luton Town team that are going to be up there fighting with, the top sides in this league for promotion. So it's really concerning how they're big strikers. You look at Adebayo and Morris on paper and you think, wow, they should be banging in the goals left, right and centre. Both of them have missed some really big chances. As I keep saying, defensively I'm concerned. And I guess with Luton, I think I heard on a fellow podcast, it might have been Benjamin Bloom's Championship Check-In podcast, Luton have only won 5 of their last 50 games. So I feel like there is just a huge adaptation and acclimatisation process here, which is maybe bigger than we thought. Maybe it's going to take Luton a lot longer than we thought to acclimatise and readapt to the Championship. And as I've suggested thus far, maybe it's also being favourites for a change, being one of the teams that are fancied, like one of the teams that are expected to go up. Maybe that's what's hindering them at the moment. As I say, I rely on them and I trust them to not panic. They don't seem like the sort of club who do that. I do feel like they'll get going at some point. It just depends on how soon that is and how much of a head start they might be giving everyone else. Burnley 1, Blackburn 1. A better point for Blackburn undoubtedly here in what was, again, another feisty Lancashire derby. And of course it was massively topped off with that incredible goal from Andy Weimann. What a gorgeous volley that was. What I would have done to have been in the away end to see that go in. But as I say, it's a much better point for Blackburn. I think it just highlights what a great start they've had. As I mentioned, my league table predictions will be getting revisited, and I can guarantee Blackburn will be given their flowers in a sense with how I think they've massively impressed. Start the season off, they obviously had another goal disallowed here, and despite being down to 10 men, they were equally as much in the game as Burnley were. Burnley, despite taking the lead, I don't think had a shot on target after the 25th minute, which of course included a huge spell second half when they had a man up, and it just feeds more into this narrative that, as we've seen with Scott Parker's sides in the past, they're not chance creating machines, they're not free flowing, they've got ridiculous quality that has got them through. And the argument in past seasons with Fulham and Bournemouth was that if Scott Parker didn't have the quality in them teams to carry his football, that's what wouldn't have got him promoted. And the jury's sort of out with Scott Parker with a lot of people until we see him manage a team that doesn't have all that much quality. And I still don't think this will be the case here with Burnley. They've got more than enough quality, but we are still, we are starting to see a few little things that sort of represent all the stigma around Scott Parker football and the fact that they've arguably overperformed. They should never have gotten 5 goals against Cardiff, but they did. They, of course, barely had a shot on target. They didn't have much going for them against Sunderland last week, and again today, not that great going forward. So how much of this start that Burnley had initially is a sort of flash in the pan, and are they regressing to kind of the level that we were at? I mean, we were looking at them as a runaway, the team to beat early on, only a few weeks ago, but already I'm starting to wonder if Scott Parker's Burnley are all that. Of course, there's a lot of turnover of the team, a lot of players who've come, a lot of players who've gone. I'm sure it'll get better when things settle down, but I'm not convinced Burnley are the force that we maybe thought they were. Cardiff 0, Boro 2, did as usual, a full Project Boro review show on this, and as I said, it's the exact result Boro deserved. It's the result we've deserved and warranted for weeks now. Of course, we've beat ourselves, arguably, with some shocking individual errors against Derby and Portsmouth, and without them, we could have probably won all 4 games so far this season. We haven't, but this was the sort of game I was just hoping that Boro would have. It's a solid, drama-free away win, clean sheet once again, very solid at the back, limiting Cardiff to not very much. They had a really good spell start of the second half, but other than that, Boro were relatively comfortable, and we took the game away from them in the second half. So I'm happy. Of course, I would have liked more points from Boro, but I still feel like we're looking really good in all departments, and I've got no real concerns. As for Cardiff, I kind of do. I mean, again, are they the worst team in the league? I don't think they are. They're bottom of the league currently. I feel like they've been very unfortunate with how many goals they've conceded compared to how many shots they've faced, but you still can't look past how poor they've been going forward. I think, is it only the 1 goal I think they may have scored so far this season? 10 conceded. As I say, a lot of them at Burnley were freaks, but still, Cardiff's start to the season has been a massive concern, and I wouldn't like to see them panic and get rid of Errol Bullock because he had a very good season last year, but we know how things are, especially towards the October international break, and I think the next spell of games after this international break are crucial for what Cardiff might do and where they might go this season. Coventry 0, Norwich 1. Coventry, I mean, I don't know why I assumed that they would just start the season a lot better, because poor starts have been Coventry's Achilles heel in seasons gone by, and it's happening again. Their only win this season was gifted to them by Oxford in stoppage time a fortnight ago. They just haven't got going, and I'm going to just say the same as what I have done with Coventry every season. They will get going, and no doubt they'll be up there. I don't feel like this is any different or there's any major alarm bells from what we've seen. I think they would have absolutely hoped to have started better, of course. Boro were in a similar situation, and thankfully we have sort of gotten off the mark quite well in the end, but I think they'll be looking to really get going and really getting a rocket up their arse, after the international break, and picking up a few consecutive positive results, because as much as they'll still be up there and in and around it, I'm sure, again, they can't be giving sides a head start like they have done. So they need to squash this indifferent start very quickly after the international break. They've certainly got the quality to do it. Norwich, though, this is the first win under Hostorup, and what a win it was. Statistically, they looked second best. I mean, from the highlights, Coventry definitely had some chances. Norwich scored with their only shot on target in this game, but from what I saw, the defending down Coventry's left-hand side was pretty poor. A free ball into the box, which fell to Borja Sainz. He finished it off. So maybe it was a bit of a snatch and grab for Norwich, but a lot of teams are going to have to do that at the CBS this season, and they have done. So I think Norwich, like Coventry, might have been concerned about a bit of an indifferent start, but they can banish that now as they've got their first win, under their belts, and they'll be looking to kick on, whereas Coventry are still looking to get started. Derby 3, Bristol City 0. Wow, this has come from absolutely nowhere, and unlike Derby's win over Boro, which this isn't me being biased, Derby, and I think Paul Warne would quite happily admit to this, once Derby scored, it was backs against the wall, and it could have been a different result on a different day. It wasn't pretty, whereas this was pretty from Derby. They looked very, very good. Some of the highlights I've saw, the goals they've scored, good, very good going forward. Not what I've sort of associated with Paul Warne, and I think he's come out and said it's one of the best performances he's had as Derby boss, and fair play to them. And you know what this has done, what this result has done is hasn't massively altered my expectations on Derby. I don't think it would be fair for one result to do that one way or the other, but this is the benchmark now for Derby County. This is the level of performance they have to try and match at home. I still think they'll struggle away from home, and this is a very similar point I'm going to make about Oxford later on. Home form is massive for teams like Derby who've just come up, And if they can perform like this at home, they'll give themselves a huge chance. Away from home, it will be obviously naturally a lot more difficult, but this is the template going forward for them, definitely. And, well, Bristol City, I mean, this is what Bristol City do, isn't it? They've had a promising start. People were getting excited, and listen, I still feel like they'll improve under Liam Manning, but I think this is just that little reality check that they've still got a poor result in them, and they might still have a streaky run in them, and that's what Bristol City do. They win a bunch of games, then they lose a bunch of games, and they can't be losing to newly promoted sides 3-0. They didn't look great defensively here, and maybe it's just a little reality check, before the international break, that it won't be a straightforward run to a playoff fight and a playoff race for Bristol City. They are going to have to be a lot better and a lot more consistent than this. Leeds 2, Hull 0. As solid of a win as you could probably ask for Leeds. And you know what? No matter what goes on at Ellen Road, on the pitch, off the pitch, transfers, you'd still fancy Leeds against most teams to comfortably win at home. I think they're not as strong, I would say, as what they were last season, but I still think they've got more than enough quality, and this is a game they should be winning. I think it was a comfortable, solid win for Leeds, and a bit like what I was saying about Boro, a very chaotic start to the season, ups and downs, lots going on, 2 wins in a row now, and a clean sheet here as well. It's just settled things down at Leeds, and the key for them will be to kick on after the break. As for Hull, I mean, I remain quietly concerned about Hull. I feel like there's a lot of other teams at the minute who are probably getting a lot more concerns raised, have a little bit more worry surrounding them. Cardiff, Luton, Plymouth, Preston, of course. But I think there's quite a concern around Hull for me. They just don't look all that good going forwards, and I'm still not 100% sure what Tim Volter's wanting to do there. I mean, I'm not expecting them to be dragged into anything major, but I think it is a clear sign thus far that Hull are nowhere near the level they were last season, and they are going to regress to mid-table mediocrity at best. Millwall 3, Sheffield Wednesday 0. First of all, I've got to get the credit out the way for Millwall. They are another side who had a bit of a frustrating start to the season. They've scored plenty of goals, to be fair. Not what you'd associate with Millwall, but they were obviously conceding a lot. So I think they still might look back at the first few games and wonder, had we been a bit more defensively solid, we'd had a few more points on the board. But hey, I'm happy to see Millwall doing well, because one former Boro lad and one on loan Boro lad combining well and doing a great job here for Millwall. I mean, first of all, Duncan Watmore's started the season unbelievably well, and we saw firsthand at Boro, albeit he's a bit of a streaky striker. When he gets going and he hits a purple patch, he can be unbelievably effective, and I think he's picked up a good chunk of goal contributions thus far for Millwall, and it's great to see a very likeable player, Duncan Watmore, and I'm glad to see him doing well. And then Josh Coburn, of course, on loan from Boro, straight away gets on the score sheet with a very good goal, peeling off the defender, tapping home, great finish, and he seems to be getting a lot of love down there already. I said when he left, and I've said it in multiple videos here on the channel, he will suit Millwall down at the ground, and I'm glad to see they've both hit the ground running, and this is a very good upbeat result for Millwall to take into the international break. And Sheffield Wednesday are a conundrum. I mean, what on earth has happened at Hillsborough? I mean, we asked the question, didn't we, on the opening day, how much of that 4-0 win over Plymouth was Sheffield Wednesday being great and Plymouth being utterly shocking? And I think we can definitely with confidence lean towards it being Plymouth being shocking. Wednesday caught them at the best possible time, because since then they've lost 2 games in a row at an aggregate score of 7-0. A very, very huge reality check. I mean, if Bristol City's defeat to Derby was a reality check, I don't know what this is for Sheffield Wednesday, because they look like the real deal on the opening weekend, and since then, I don't think they've just been dragged back down to earth. I think they've been thrown through the earth, to be honest with you, and Danny Rowe's got a big job to pick his team up here and sort of dust off what have been 3 very poor defeats and get them going again, because a lot of pre-season optimism will have took a huge blow and a huge hit over the last few weeks. So, yeah, not overly concerned by Sheffield Wednesday yet, but a bit of a shock to see that they've lost 3-0 here, and once again, they didn't look great at all. Oxford 3, Preston 1. What a result for Oxford. Another win at home, and I'll say exactly what I said with Derby County. They've mirrored each other, to be honest. 2 home wins, 2 away defeats. They just need to rely on their home form, Oxford, and it will give them a chance. And I'm not going to, get too excited and be too convinced that they're going to be away from safety or they're going to stay up just yet. But this, like what I said about Derby, is exactly what Oxford need to do. A fantastic goal from Tyler Goodrum here, an outstanding goal from him. Mark Harris, 4 from 4. I mean, if you're coming up from League One, you want to have a prolific goal scorer, and Harris has started the season exceptionally well. So a brilliant result for Oxford, and exactly like with Derby, this is the template for them going forward, and I'm sure, as I've said, they'll make the Kazam as much of a fortress as possible. As for Preston, I mean, they took the lead early here, but then had a sending off in the second half. It's going to take time at Preston. I think Heckingbottom's a good appointment, and I do feel like he'll steady the ship enough, and they won't end up getting dragged into that much of a relegation fight. I don't think they'll be anywhere near where they were last season, but for me, I think they need to just draw a line under what's been a mess of a start and basically restart their season after the international break. I think they'll still have enough in the team to be mid-table, but I can't see them being any higher than that. Plymouth 0, Stoke 1. Good win for Stoke here. I mean, I've seen a lot of excitement around Stoke fans, and yep, I get it. It's a good solid 1-0 win, but Plymouth are looking pretty dire at the moment. I know it's a narrow win and it's not a massive defeat for Plymouth, but they've faced 90 shots this season, and I think the XG they're creating, the XG against, it adds up to them being on the wrong side of most results, in my opinion, and they're not doing what Oxford and Derby have done. They're not making home park the fortress that I think it needs to be, because I don't have faith that Plymouth will get all that much away from home. They have to do more at home park, and right now they're not. So although it's not the disaster class that was the opening day against Sheffield Wednesday or the opening weekend, there's nothing yet that I'm seeing from Plymouth that convinces me that they'll be nothing other than one of the three sides in that bottom three. Pompey 1, Sunderland 3. Sunderland have gone 4 from 4 now. It's been a brilliant start for our northeast neighbours. As a neutral, I mean, you can only applaud them for how well they've looked so far. I mean, yeah, once again, they're barely conceding chances. They're barely giving the opposition a sniff, which is, a huge, huge part to their success thus far, and they're looking pretty good going forward too. And, Pompey have faced 3 very good teams this season, none of which have been able to beat them. Sunderland have, and doing it down at Fratton Park isn't easy either, so a very good result for Sunderland, 4 from 4. Listen, it's a good start, and I think they've certainly leapt forward in my expectations this season, albeit I do feel like with a young side, you've got to expect these mad purple patches, but then equally drop-offs, and this will inevitably regress, and I think it will average out, as it does with a lot of sides who've started the season on fire. Preston did it last season, Blackburn have done it. I think Sunderland will probably not have wanted the international break, but it might just stem their momentum a little bit. Be interesting to see if they can pick up from where they left off after the international break. And you know what, with Pompey, I still feel like they'll snap your hands off for 3 points from the opening 4. Absolutely. And points are all that matters, right? But the expected points that I've seen and the number of chances that they're conceding is a bit of a concern. And when Tom from 4-0 Written All Over It come up to the Riverside the other week and we were chatting, and he's a great YouTuber, by the way, go and check out his channel if you haven't already, he did say, and I think he said it in his vlog, Pompey can't keep playing like this. It's not sustainable, fighting fire with fire, albeit they have played the topper end of championship teams, so maybe if they play more, as much of an open game, they might come out on the right end of more results than they have done thus far. But I still feel like this open football where they're conceding a lot going the other way, it might get them in trouble more often than not. So I don't know how sustainable this is for Pompey, but it's so hard to judge with them having such a tough start to the season, and it doesn't let up after they get back either following the international break with West Brom, Burnley and Sheffield United. Good grief. They just need to keep plugging away Pompey, and it will get easier soon enough. But still, 3 points on the board. I think they'll take that regardless of what the data says. West Brom 1, Swansea 0. A good result for West Brom. They were dominant here. The much better side. Created a ton of chances. Their only real negative is they should have had more. And you look at the league table, they're quietly up there in second. And I've said it before, I'll bang the drum. Carlos Corberán is just doing what Carlos Corberán does. He quietly goes about his business and his team get results, and I don't care if they don't have the star names that other teams do, they don't play the football other teams do. West Brom are very good at going under the radar and just doing their job, and they're doing it again. Swansea, on the other hand, they're up, they're down. I think what I've seen from Swansea so far is they'll beat a lot of teams near the bottom. They won't beat a lot of teams near the top. They are screaming out mid-table mediocrity right now and have probably already, at the moment, reserved a spot in between 12th and 15th. And finally, Sheffield United 1, Watford 0. Watford's 100% record comes to an end. It was always going to be interesting to see how Watford would do once they faced a real test. You know, I don't want to, judge them too much on the teams they've played, but you could say the same for Sunderland as well. You know, they've had a relatively easy start in terms of the teams they've come up against. You know, Stoke, Derby, Plymouth. I think, Watford will take 3 wins there, but this is the first time they've had a real test, and they've come up short, and they were short by quite a bit here. Sheffield United were solid, well worth the win. Again, a bit like West Brom, would have probably wanted more. Obviously missed a penalty as well, and when they get back, Watford, they've got Coventry, Norwich, Sunderland when they get back, so this opening run of good results might dissipate quite quickly. We'll see how they cope with that. But as for Sheffield United, they still just continue to be solid without being spectacular. A bit like West Brom, I think they'll just edge their way into the top 6 without being all that spectacular, but they've certainly got the team to do it, and they've certainly started the season pretty well given the dismal season they had last year. So there's my roundup of the Championship, a bit longer this week, but I'm glad we've got through it all. Thank you for sticking with me here on the channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As I say, I will be doing various Championship League table videos throughout the international break to help fill the plug, and I'll probably do a few individual videos on some of the clubs and how they've started as well, so subscribe for all that good stuff and like the video, as it really helps the video out. And as I say, comment below with your thoughts on your team and any results that stood out to you this weekend. But until the next one, guys, thank you so much for watching. See you all next time.